I'll never forget the look on the officer's face when I stepped out of my car, holding my badge. Not a police badge, but my judicial one. He was moments away from cuffing me on my own property, thanks to a power-hungry HOA president who didn't realize she'd just picked a fight with the very judge who oversaw their legal jurisdiction. It all started 3 months earlier when I finally decided to move back to my late father's home, an old colonial-style house nestled at the end of Willow Creek Lane. My father had built it himself, decades before the neighborhood became a subdivision and fell under the control of a homeowners association. To me, that land was sacred. Every tree, every brick carried his legacy. But when I arrived, I quickly realized that peace was not something this neighborhood offered anymore. Within a week, I was introduced to the self-proclaimed Queen of the HOA, Margaret Fletcher, though everyone quietly called her Karen the Conqueror. She was the type of person who believed every fence should be her business, every garden under her command. The first confrontation came before I even unpacked. I was trimming the hedges when a silver SUV screeched to a halt in front of my driveway. Margaret stepped out, clipboard in hand, and marched toward me as if I had committed a federal offense. "You can't do that without approval," she barked. "Do what?" I asked, still holding the hedge trimmer. "Landscaping. You're altering property visible from the street without an approved modification request. It's in the bylaws." I chuckled softly, wiping sweat from my forehead. "This isn't under the HOA's jurisdiction, ma'am. This property predates your covenant." Her face twisted into disbelief. "Every home on this street is under HOA regulation. Not this one," I said simply. "You can check your records." She did, and that was the beginning of her obsession. Over the next few weeks, Margaret tried everything. She left violation notices on my door for things like unauthorized lawn decorations and non-compliant lighting. She even had the HOA's private security guard park in front of my home for hours, documenting my every move. One morning, I came outside to find my mailbox ripped from the ground and replaced with one bearing the HOA logo. A note was taped on top. Mandatory uniformity for all properties. That was the day I stopped playing nice. I filed a quiet claim through the county registrar's office, reaffirming my deed's exemption from the HOA. I didn't tell Margaret who I was, not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. And she didn't disappoint. A week later, I returned from a late-night court session to find police cars lined up in my driveway. Their lights flashed against my windows like a scene out of a crime show. As I pulled up, 2 officers approached with stern expressions. "Sir, you're under suspicion of trespassing," one said. "This property is under HOA control. We received a report that you've been unlawfully occupying it." I laughed, though it was bitter. "Who told you that?" "The HOA president, ma'am, Mrs. Fletcher," the officer replied, glancing at his notepad. "She claims you've been warned multiple times to vacate." At that moment, Margaret strutted out of the shadows, her arms folded and a smug smile painted across her face. "You should have listened when I told you to leave, mister. Now, maybe you'll respect authority." I looked at her for a long moment, the anger simmering beneath my calm expression. Then I reached into my briefcase, pulled out my official ID, and held it up to the officers. "Gentlemen," I said evenly, "I am authority." The younger officer blinked. "Wait. You're Judge Harrison Cole." "That's right," I said. "And this is my residence, legally exempt from the HOA. Since 1982. Margaret's face drained of color. Wait. That's impossible." "No, what's impossible," I interrupted, "is how far your harassment has gone. You've filed false reports, trespassed, vandalized property, and misrepresented legal authority. I suggest you stop talking and call your attorney." The officers exchanged awkward glances before turning to her. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step aside." She tried to protest, but it was over. I had her right where she'd put herself, on the wrong side of the law. The next day, I filed a formal injunction against the HOA for harassment, defamation, and unlawful enforcement of non-binding covenants. During the hearing, I recused myself from presiding, of course, but word spread quickly through the courthouse. The HOA board members looked stunned when the substitute judge read my evidence aloud. Property deeds, legal maps, photos, police reports, and even recordings of Margaret's threats. By the end of the hearing, the room was silent. The judge's verdict was swift and merciless. The HOA has overstepped its authority and unlawfully targeted a private citizen. The association is hereby dissolved pending further review. Margaret burst into tears, begging for leniency, but there was none left to give. She had turned a peaceful neighborhood into her personal kingdom, and that kingdom had just crumbled. When I returned home that evening, the sun was setting over the hill where my father used to sit with me as a child. The air was quiet again. Peaceful. I stood by his old rocking chair and finally felt something I hadn't in months: closure. Neighbors soon came by to apologize. Some brought cookies, others just offered kind words. They'd all been scared of Margaret, too. I told them, don't fear people who think power makes them untouchable. The law protects the fair, not the loud. And from that day on, Willow Creek Lane was no longer ruled by fear or ego. It was just a community again, neighbors helping neighbors. As for me, I still serve on the bench. But every time I hear a case about abuse of authority, I remember that night, the flashing lights, the false accusations, and the woman who thought she could rule with intimidation. She forgot one simple truth: justice doesn't knock. It walks right through the front door.